EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mac, John McMullen, as we continue to move through the offseason here on a May 6th, the Tuesday edition. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Tuesday morning, brother?
I'm doing well. Getting through the offseason. Big news, big scouting news in Eagles land. Losing Anthony Patch, the senior director of college scouting. Been here for 23 years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Little bit of the weird little Chip Kelly era. He got fired for.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because now Chip's in where he went. He went to the Raiders, right? So now Chip Kelly's there.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I and more to do with John Spytek. He and Anthony Patch worked together with the Eagles early days as scouts, so they know each other. He's the new GM, so I don't think it has much to do with Chip, who doesn't have the kind of power in Las Vegas as he once did in Philadelphia for a very brief period of time. That was like the Celtics jacking up 65 threes for Jeffrey Lurie, who ironically is a Celtics fan. He had that little brain fart where he went away from everything he knew for a very brief period, fired, a bunch of personnel people, let Chip have everything, and then fired Chip and went back to normal. That's why he's been with the team for 23 consecutive years, but he was actually fired for a brief layover in 2015 and I think 2016 it was.
Yeah, he came back in 2016. So his role was he was the senior the college. What was he? The senior
director of college scouting.
Senior director of college scouting, which I guess means what? He manages pro days. He manages some, where the scouts are going.
Charge of the college scouting department. So yeah, all the scouts he's in charge of all of them. So he had a big job. But I always say the advantage of the Eagles, they got a deep bench, as I say. When it comes to personnel, they have a much bigger personnel department than most teams. I wouldn't say, some teams, but some teams at penny pinch. I bring up Cleveland all the time. They got a big advantage over that. So they have a deep bench. And everybody who's watching the unscripted Eagles thing they put up, their unscripted show, kind of saw a bunch of them. They gave you a little clip of their Saturday, what they call passion meeting.
Yeah.
And you saw all the different people talking about different players. And you got to see a lot of them. You got to see Chuck Walls, who's the vice president of player personnel. You got to see Dave Caldwell, who is, the former GM in Jacksonville, who is a senior personnel director here. Matt Russell used to be the personnel guy in Denver. Saw him. Anthony spoke, I believe, in that. I believe Phil Baia did as well. Ryan Myers, who's the assistant director of college scouting. So he would be next in line if they wanted just to go with their in-house flow chart. But they have so many different guys. In charge, they got the two guys. Well, Dave Caldwell and Matt Russell are former, big time personnel people in the league, and they're advisors to Howie. They're called senior personnel directors. So they're sort of, they don't live here. Anthony didn't live here. Anthony lived in Washington State. And they advise from outside the building. Obviously, they're inside the building on draft weekend. But the guys sort of that run the player personnel department, there's co-heads, and that's Chuck Walls and Alan Wolking. Those they run the whole personnel department. And then you have Brandon Hunt. You might remember him. That's the guy they got from Pittsburgh a couple years ago. He's the senior director of scouting. Then would be Anthony, I would say would be fourth or sixth, depending if you want to count Dave Caldwell and Matt Russell, which you probably should. And then it goes down to everybody else, the Phil Baez, who's director of player personnel, the Jeremy Grays, assistant director of player personnel, Ryan Myers, who I just said, and then the college scouts. And keep an eye. That's another guy you got to see speak, Lee D. Valerio, because he's the Southeast area scout, which, you know, you don't want to say that's the FCC. So you've seen the success, and that's where Alan came from, Alan Wolking, who is, again, vice president of player personnel. He was their Southeast area scout. So, anyway, yeah, they have a very, very deep bench.
Yeah, sounds like it. I mean, you're rattling off names, that people, most people have never heard. I've heard of them because I do the show with you. But John, so his new title in Vegas is senior personnel executive. Again, you mentioned he was the senior director of college scouting here. So I would presume he got a little bit of an upgrade, maybe in pay and maybe in role. Why does the team let a guy like this walk out? Is it simply because they don't have any room to promote him? Do they not care that much because they got so many people? Why not keep a guy who's been here for 23 years?
Oh, they kept him for 23 years. Yeah. I mean, one of the problems with having an entrenched general, and you've already seen it in the recent past with Brandon Brown, Ian Cunningham, even Jake Rosenberg from a business perspective, guys reach a ceiling.
Yeah, well, listen, Howie's part of that because he's got 20, he's got a GM here and he's not going anywhere. So people know that.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, some people realize they have to go outside the organization to maybe take that next step in their careers. Now, with Anthony, I think he'd been here for so long. I'm not sure general managers is the ultimate end game, but John Spytek is his friend, so that's probably part of it. It is a promotion. He's getting more money, obviously. And then the Eagles didn't want to lose him. So, I mean, it's one of those things. And again, I used to explain this to Jody. Personnel people are a different calendar than players and coaches. So their contracts go from draft to draft.
Right.
And it's generally, so you'll see it all over the league in early May, guys' contracts run out. They move around. It could be low level, could be higher level. But we talk about coaching contracts. I mean, we have no idea whose scouting contract is expiring, unless you have a deep personal relationship with the person and ask them. Right. And nobody's talking contracts and things like that, even in normal life. So a lot of guys, their contract just run. I have no idea if that's the case with Anthony. It's generally 2-3 years rollover. And if he didn't have another opportunity, he'd be here. The Eagles weren't looking. They were disappointed. They wanted to keep him.
Right.
But they also realize it's a promotion. He's closer to home. As I said, he lives in Washington State. So a lot easier to get to Vegas than, flying across country. So that's part of it. But yeah, I mean, it happens. Same thing with Brandon Brownie and Cunningham a couple years ago. With them, they have GM aspirations and they're younger and
right. The Howie Roseman tree is getting pretty big out there, John.
Oh, the Eagles tree is huge across the league, and it should be because I said there's two teams, Eagles and Ravens, that make the best personnel decisions pretty consistently. So yeah, it's huge and it's getting bigger. And Alec Hallaby's probably going to be gone soon. He's already gotten a bunch of interviews. If they continue to have success, he's the assistant GM. I didn't even get into Alec and John Ferrari.
Yeah, right. That's a whole different
this
sector.
is just the football.
There could be more changes coming here too, right? In the front office. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, last year they announced a bunch in June, which lines up with what you say. The contracts go through draft to draft. So, you'll probably see some more potentially more changes. Maybe
not, there will be. There'll be guys getting promoted. Might be Ryan Myers. He just might get promoted. They might go outside the organization. Right. They went outside the organization to get Brandon Hunt a couple years ago. But they do have a very deep bench. And they're prepared for this because they know they're going to lose guys, and they have, and there could be more. Anthony could be close with somebody whose contract expired. He might want to bring them over to Las Vegas, and that could be from scouts all the way down, all the way up to more senior people. But yeah, that's part of the just same with players. If you have success, people want to pilfer from you, and that translates to the front office as well.
Yep, no doubt about it. It's part of being good. So if you'd rather not have people get poached, then your alternative is to stink out loud. That's not what we want or what the Eagles want. So this is part of their business. I want to welcome and thank everybody for being here this morning. All right, Anthony Patch is out. Thank you, Anthony Patch, for 23 great years in Philadelphia. He's been here through a lot.
22 and a half. 22
and a half. Well, he's seen a lot in Philly, so I wonder. I'm sure he's got some stories to tell about the organization maybe one day. But welcome, or congrats to Anthony Patch for getting the upgrade and moving on. And he is out of here again. Welcome everybody in. I want you to hit that like button this morning if you're enjoying the show. We're getting through our Eagles Daily segment here this morning. And then we got two great segments coming up. And then in hour number 2, we're going to have Devin Jackson from the Inquirer. Many of you guys remember Devin, I'm sure, if you listen every day. Devin came on pre-draft. He's the Philadelphia Inquirer's draft guy. He was out in Green Bay for the NFL draft. He does excellent work. So we'll get his take on the draft class coming up in hour number 2. And then we'll talk offense and defense here before Devin Jackson comes in. So we'll talk about that. John, some other Eagles Daily updates I want to get to. Real quick, our guy Britton Covey is gone. He signed with the Rams. Figured I'd say that because he's been a part of the team for the last few years. So Britton Covey is on the outs. I wonder if they use him in a different way than the Eagles did.
Yeah, I don't know. We have to see if Britton's healthy. I was texting with him yesterday. Yeah. I just didn't congratulate him, and just a great dude. I explained that injury a little bit. He was having trouble gripping the football, so that was sort of dangerous. But evidently, he's good enough to be cleared by the Rams. So good for him. I thought it was ironic on the day that the Eagles lose Anthony Patch, Britton signed elsewhere because he's one of those success stories, undrafted, coming out of Utah, undersized, turns into a difference-making punt returner. He was the best punt returner in football in 2023. And he was here for 3 years.
Statistically, he was, but he didn't have any upside in terms of taking it to the house or anything, but he was consistent in getting yards.
Well, he never got a touchdown. That always, but he led the league in 40+ returns that year. So that's
I just meant you didn't have the upside. Like you didn't have the potential for the breakaway. Maybe you weren't looking for that. Maybe Britton was.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He had more breakaway. See, I disagree with that. He had more breakaway punt returns than anybody else. 40+ punt returns than anybody else in the NFL that year. So that's big. That's big play. That's breakaway play. Now, did he get the touchdown? People are going to say touchdowns. Well, if you have one touchdown and average 10 yards a return versus 5 40-yard punt returns and average 14 a return, I don't know. It's pretty good. Yeah. No offense to you, Zander, but that's nitpicking. When you lead the NFL, and he was second in average.
No offense taken, John. It's all good. It's all good. I was never that high on Britton Covey.
He was second in the NFL in average. He was first in punt return yardage. He was first in explosive punt returns. And by the way, I've heard Nick Sirianni say this multiple times.
We'll be good without Britton Covey. Yes or no?
Well, you'll be good without any punt returner in the history of the game. You'll be good without Devin Hester. It's in the Hall of Fame now, and maybe the best returner of all time. Nobody needs a great punt returner or kick returner. The Eagles won a Super Bowl. Does anybody remember who their kick returner was?
No. Well, I wonder if the Rams use him differently because I do think he had the chance to kind of contribute on the offense as a receiver. Now, the Eagles never really gave him that chance. There were some limited moments, but I think I could kind of see McVay liking him and using him in the offense a little bit more than just as a punt returner.
Well, he it's interesting. That's part of the problem. I mean, one of the reasons he didn't get drafted. So I was talking about Anthony Patch and the college scouting department finding him. They didn't, they didn't find Britton Covey. He was an All-American. He was, he was the best punt returner in college. Him or Marcus Jones, that kid from New England. He led Utah in receiving, I don't know, 3-4 years, but he's tiny. That's why he didn't get drafted. And that showed up because last year he was developing into a bigger role. And they gave him the football in that one game where he had 5 or 6 receptions, something like that. And he got hurt. I mean, that's he is. We talk about undersized all the time. We talk about, is Makuba undersized? Is Nolan Smith? I mean,
it's like become the new hot word, undersized.
there are levels to undersized, and Britton is just outrageously undersized for the NFL. And he got hurt. So I don't know if he's going to turn into anything as a receiver, although he's a very good route runner. He can get open, as he showed in limited opportunities, but I just don't know if he can take the pounding, to be honest. So, I mean, he's going to have to win their punt return job to make the team, I think. And, if he's healthy, he's probably going to win their punt return job. Because there aren't too many punt returners better than he is.
Yeah, there you go, Britton Covey. Maybe I slighted him. Sorry, Britton. We appreciate what you did for us here in Philly, brother.
3 years.
The 5'6" frame just throws me off. But you're right. The production was there for sure. I take back any hate that was sent toward Britton.
3 years, 3 playoff appearances. Everybody gives Jalen credit, so I'm going to give Britton credit.
Right,
3 years,
whatever.
Three playoff appearances, 2 NFC championships, 1 Super Bowl championship.
There you go.
He'll always be a Super Bowl. He'll always be a Super Bowl champion.
He could end up in the Eagles Ring of Honor one day. No, I'm kidding. JH checks in the fullback. This is my next topic. JH, thank you very much. John Jeffrey Lurie speaking yesterday on WIP. The fullback is back. Is that Ben Van Sumeren? What do we think of this coming back? And by the way, does it signal what the offense might look like in 25? Many wondered, hey, will they try and get better in the passing game? They were 29th last year. Nick Sirianni famously says, you don't want to be bottom 5 in anything. Well, the owner's talking about bringing back a fullback, baby. They got him. They got Harrison Bryant. They got a couple of options there at fullback.
What do you think of that? Harrison Bryant listener excited. Yeah, well, they were starting to use it when Ben got hurt, and it was very successful for them and very limited time. But every time Ben would go out there, he'd open these huge holes. With the help of the offensive line, obviously, but it's just an extra layer. And he was doing really well. Then he got hurt in practice leading up, I believe, to the Baltimore game. So, I mean, he's going to be the fullback. We'll see how much they use it. If you go back to last year, Kyle Juszczyk was a high point, and he's a different type of fullback. He's not a traditional fullback. He's more of a receiving type H-back, 537 snaps. So he's number 1, and I think you can take him out because he's not a real fullback. So then the biggest real fullback, I would say, would be Patrick Ricard in Baltimore, at least from what people think of fullback, old school fullback. And obviously they led the NFL in rushing. The Eagles ran for, I believe, the 6th most rushing yards in NFL history. And they were number 2 in the NFL because Baltimore was number 1. Which is crazy if you think about that. But
yeah, it's really crazy.
So, it can help. But I think that's your complete upside, 495 offensive snaps. No way you're getting above that. And I would say no way you're getting the 495. No freaking way. So after you go Ricard, then it goes down to Alex Ingold of Miami with 337. Are you getting to that? Yeah, I find that hard to believe too. I think if you see it, there were only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 fullbacks last year in the NFL. So that's what Jeffrey was talking about, trying to revive what essentially is a dormant position. And I think they'll use it more, 270 offensive snaps if you're healthy for 17 games. I think that's probably your upside. But it's another little layer. And, something unfortunately we're going to have to get back into because it's coming up is the spring NFL meeting. And all indications are they are going to ban pushing. They're going to reword the thing, and they're going to ban it.
Push. When is that meeting?
May 20th and 21st, I think. All indications they're going to rework it, and ultimately it's going to get through. And pushing's going to be out of the game, so you have to start thinking about different ways. And I imagine the fullback is part of that as well. But I've said it pretty consistently. If the Eagles do a conventional quarterback sneak, they're going to be just fine. But
we'll see
another reason to throw it in the mix. Plus, Ben was doing it really well. And you have to see if Ben is healthy, if he's the same guy. Very serious leg injury. So have to all that back.
Johnny Mac, last piece of business here. Then we'll dive into some offensive talk and some defensive talk before we get Devin Jackson up in hour number 2. Appreciate everybody being here. One more super chat. Let me read it real quick. Jason 18, thank you, brother. Hit the like button, family. Morning Z and J Mac. Good morning, brother. Hit that like button. 18. We appreciate the super chat. John, the other thing that happened was the Met Gala. Our boys were there. Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. Jalen was.
There was a lot of football players
this week, but what'd you say?
There was a lot of football players in general.
Football players.
I'm like, what is going on? Yeah, I don't remember this being like this big in the sports world. There were a ton of football players. I saw, as well as Jalen and Saquon, I saw Jefferson was there. Diggs was there.
Yeah, Diggs. I saw a bunch of people. Joe Burrow was there.
Burrow was there. I'm like, what is going on? What did I miss? But anyway, yeah. Chance to dress up in some goofy outfits and have a good time. Have a good time with the.
No scheduling conflicts kept Jalen from.
There we go.
There it is, John.
All the Jalen. It's
no
funny,
scheduling conflict this week.
I find the Philadelphia fan base so interesting sometimes. I'm like, if you dare say, hey, you know what? He's got to improve a little bit about this on the field. You are enemy number one. If you say, well, if he's at the Met Gala, he's got to be at the White House, or if he's at the Met Gala, he's got to be at AJ's engagement party. Then you're full clear. You're good to go. I mean, it's bizarre to me. It's like, who gives a shit?
I think you can say all the above. I got no issue with any of the above. I mean, the reality is the team was bottom in the league in passing last year. Do you want to live with that or not? That's a fair thing to say. Why is that not fair to say?
I've been saying it since day one. It's incredibly fair. I just find it ironic. People get really upset by that. And in the case of stuff that they shouldn't be upset by, like people's personal lives, unless they're doing something illegal, as happened in Baltimore recently, or allegedly. The Met Gala and somebody's engagement party is not, it's not relevant. That's all I'm saying.
King Hurts, baby. King Hurts rolling up to the Met. No, I thought they looked good. It was cool to see him out there. Saquon was there as well. So for Eagles news, a lot of people are like,
the second time Saquon got invited.
This is my favorite comment of the day on the Met Gala. Cody K says, "What the F is the Met Gala?"
Yeah, it's for the
Cody, I appreciate that comment right there. I appreciate that comment. The big stupid ass thing is really what it is. Bunch of celebrities get together. Yeah, bunch of rich celebrities get together and dress up and wine and dine each other.
It's regarded. It's for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, so you got to be high cultured in Manhattan. It's a fundraiser, but it's considered to be like the events of the year for fashion. That's what it's considered. So that's why you see all these goofballs wearing these outrageous, goofy outfits. But anyway, yeah, it's basically a chance for people to gush over celebrities as if they need another opportunity to do that.
Yeah, seriously, I'm done with that.
But Saquon, real quick, Saquon he was invited before when he was in. I do think this about Saquon. He doesn't miss the Giants, but he misses New York. He likes New York.
You think so? You mean just like the hype and the
other stuff, the Met Gala stuff. That's what.
Yeah, right. I can see that.
He's always back in New York.
Well, New York is. I mean, look, listen. New York is a beacon for many people across the world, to go to. So I can understand that. I'd have no problem with that. Saquon likes the show. That's all good for me. So Johnny Mac saying Saquon does miss New York. I can see that.
Well, I can see that. I have no problem with it either. I get it, he likes the celebrity part of it, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But that's the second Met Gala. He's a regular.
Diggs had a dress on. I don't know what's up with men dressing like women nowadays. Is that's like a new culture thing or something? I don't know.
I don't know what. Check out Jefferson. I don't know what he was wearing.
I didn't see that. The only two I saw really were Jalen and.
Well, if you're a wrestling fan, he's dressed like Seth Rollins, who does that wild shit. Yeah, he had this big puffy thing on. I don't even know what's going on. But that's the whole point of it. You're supposed to. Whatever the current fashion trend is in the fashion world, you're supposed to have a theme every year. I don't know what the theme was. If it was puffy shirt like Seinfeld, I don't know. But they have a theme every year. Then you're supposed.
It goes back to that corny get together that we talked about with the these rich celebrities all dressing goofy and whatever they call it fashion. It is what it is, all right. And then they'll sell it for like $18,000 per T-shirt and store.
Oh yeah.
There we go. We'll move on, Johnny Mac. John, I want to move into some offense and some defense talk. All right, we are post NFL draft for 30 minutes in here on this Tuesday edition of Birds 365. It's time to talk about the offense. We just brought up the passing. Now we're going to talk about the offense a little bit. The first person I want to talk to you about, who I think is maybe one of the more concerning parts of this team coming into the 2025 season, is Kevin Patullo. All right, he's your new offensive coordinator. Now he's been here since Nick Sirianni's been here, so he has overseen the offense for a while, or at least been a part of it for a while. I think that's a good thing. What are your expectations? Your expectations for the offense coming into the 2025 season?
Similar to last season. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. As long as Saquon is here and healthy, and playing at the level he's playing at, I think they're going to ride that until as long as humanly possible. And then when that ends, you got to shift because you're probably not going to find a replacement to bring that type of game-changing ability onto the offense from the backfield. So, we just talked about the fullback. As long as Saquon is here, they're going to ride him. Kept asked that probably between all the reporters that are there daily. We probably asked that 100 times. Like, are you worried about touches? Are you worried about this? Or he's never touched the ball this much. The history when you touch the ball this much. And every single time Nick Sirianni would answer it the same, which is, we manage him during the week. Right. If he's got to run it 40 times to win a game, we're going to run him 40 times. They've made that decision.
Which I think is a good approach.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue. It won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, but you're right to speculate. At what point does the rubber meet the road, or does that die off a little bit?
Well, no, it's going to meet the road. I mean, he's a human being eventually.
Right. That's why I'm asking. At what point does it happen? Is it this season? Is it next season? And but the other thing I think that factors in this year, John, is the NFL changes year to year. Just like we talk about, Jaden Daniels, defenses are going to be more prepared for him. Well, I think coming into this year, even if Jalen and the offense showed that they were capable of winning when you took away Saquon, look to Pittsburgh, look to the Super Bowl versus the Chiefs. I think defensive coordinators are going to do their very best to take away Saquon Barkley next year. And I don't think he's going to get 2,000 yards again. Now, I think he's going to have a great season because he's a great football player. But at what point or how far back do you think that will fall? Or maybe not at all.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, it's very unlikely he's going to rush for 2,500 yards through the Super Bowl again. And teams are going to be more hyper focused. Like what's funny, I say it all the time. People call it a copycat league, and it is, but it's a very slow moving copycat league. And I think people came into this season, this past season, still thinking more about A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and the passing game than they did the running game. And it amped up as it went on. People were unsuccessful for the most part. Ironically, maybe the most successful team was the Super Bowl. And then the passing game did show up. So everything worked out. But I do think you're going to see more of a hyper focus. I think the Rams are the highlight of that. Because when you look back at it, the Rams were the team that gave the Eagles by far their most toughest test in the playoffs. And they had this great pass rush, but they were tremendously undersized. They had the worst middle linebacker in the history of football. I don't even know what they were trying to do with Christian Roseboom. And they came close, but ultimately weren't able to get it done against the Eagles. And now you look at their offseason, all of a sudden, obviously, they moved on from Roseboom. I don't even know where he went, but they bring in Poona Ford instead of having that. Last year was Braden Fisk and Covey Turner, who are both great players, but really, really undersized and really, really good pass rushers, but can't stop the run. Now, all of a sudden, you got this big, all he does is stop the run, Poona Ford.
I happen to be a Poona Ford fan. Poona Ford.
Yeah, well, he's very good at his job. And then they bring in, not that it's, Chris Paul Jr., not that it's, an inside linebacker, but I don't know that much about Chris Paul Jr. as a prospect. Maybe we can ask Devin about him, but I guarantee he's better than Christian Roseboom. And they also brought in Nate Landman, who's a bigger linebacker. Again, not splashy names, but you can see the process of what they're thinking. Like, all right, we gotta get a little bit better stopping the run. And just the presence of Ford will probably do that to a certain extent, if he stays healthy. But because that's a player, it's very difficult to have a backup for, obviously, similar to here with Jordan Davis. So I think you're going to see that. And even Washington, their mentality was, all right, we got to get better to stop the run. In the division, you're going to see the New York Giants. You can say all you want about the New York Giants, and nobody makes fun of the New York Giants more than me. But their bucket defensive line is good.
It is. It's stacked.
It is good and talented. And then the Cowboys are the Cowboys, always getting in their way. But you can see it in the division as well. So yeah, people are going to be more focused on stopping the Eagles' run game, and then hopefully you start leaving A.J. Brown one-on-one, you're in trouble. So that's
Right.
what the Eagles have done. They've
That's
built
what it
up
comes
this.
down to, I think, this year. Because there are people in the chat, oh, what do you mean they're going to take away Saquon? They're not going to take away Saquon. I'm like, well, there's more tape on him now. Saquon wasn't with the Eagles until last year. So defensive coordinators study that. Spags did put out a little bit of a blueprint on stopping Saquon, maybe not the rest of the team, but it's going to come down to the offense and the passing game this year, right? To take advantage of that when they do take away Saquon. If they can pass the ball effectively, then I think teams are screwed.
Yeah, that's what happened in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Nobody did a better job taking Saquon away than the Chiefs. And, but to do it, they had to leave H.A. open on the outside and Devontae open on the outside. And you saw the results of that one-on-one on the outside. So, and that's what the Eagles have done. They built up this tremendously talented offense. And that's when you see them struggle in the regular season, as they did too often last year. You're like, what's going on? What's wrong? What's the problem? And again, if they lose that game against the Rams, all we're talking about this offseason is how bad the passing game was. I believe 65 net yards in that game. Now, you put the snow and all that stuff. I don't care. They had so many games during the season where the passing game was ineffective. And
you could also point to the Rams in that game. The Rams played on the same field. They threw it like 350 passing yards, didn't they?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I don't know how much it was, but it was far more significant than the Eagles. Yes.
I'll get the number.
And they're a dome team. That SoFi is, part dome, part not dome. But
Stafford had 324 passing yards and 2 touchdowns in that game.
Yeah, and he played his entire career, and obviously at Ford Field. And you have the warm weather team coming in, and they were a Jalen Carter pass rush away from probably losing that game, because the receiver, Higbee behind, was wide open because the slipping coverage, and probably would have walked in if Jalen Carter didn't make the pass rush. And if that happens, and that's just part of football. I'm not saying you can do that in almost any one-score game. You can point to a play. That's not the point. That's not why I'm doing it. The point is, all the people who say it's not a problem, it's not a problem, it's not a problem, it's not a problem, don't worry about it, don't worry, are incensed all off season because they're upset in the divisional round against a lesser team because they couldn't pass the ball at all. Incensed to the point that's all we would be talking about the entire offseason. And now we're not talking about it at all, which is kind of weird. But, it's easier to put your head in the sand than say, hey, you know what? And by the way, that's not the Eagles. They know they need to get more consistent, better, and they will try.
Well, we're talking about it now. Then what do you think the passing game is gonna have to be this year? They were 29th in the league last year, but I don't really say that in a negative way because you got a running back with 2,500 freaking yards. Obviously, you didn't have to pass that much. Nobody could stop Saquon Barkley. But if that does change or it does shift a little bit, then what do you think what do you think the goal is for the offense this year from a passing perspective? Or are not worried about where they're rated and they're more worried about the success of the overall offense?
I don't think they're worried about where they're rated. I think they're worried about the efficacy, the efficiency of the passing game.
But wasn't it pretty efficient last year? Like, I know it wasn't a lot, but when they did need to do it.
In games, yes. In the Super Bowl, it was tremendously efficient. In Pittsburgh, against Pittsburgh, it was tremendously efficient. Yeah. Then there was the Rams game. Then there was the Carolina game. There was a whole host of games where it was far from efficient.
Right. So there was a little bit of both. You got a sample size of both.
Yeah. So, when it's fine, people forget the bad stuff. Like, if that bad stuff turned into season-ending bad stuff, and it was this close, that's why I bring it up. It was one play. It was literally one play. If Jalen Carter does not make that play, And I said it to him in the locker room. I go, dude, you realize you saved this season. And, Jalen is tremendously modest for his talent level. And he was like sheepish about it, but that's the reality. He saved the season.
He got a badass tattoo that I saw you was posted up. Did you see that?
Yeah, well, I'm a little concerned by that. If what not the tattoo, but he was put under to get the tattoo. I read.
I don't know. I don't know if that was true or not because I
Yeah,
saw
well, that's
that.
I'm saying. I don't know if that's true. If that's true, yeah, I'm not. I would not be happy with that if I'm the Eagles. But I don't give a shit about the tattoos. But
why wouldn't you be happy with that? Just
it's dangerous. Who's doing that? First of all, I don't even believe it. I shouldn't have brought it.
I don't either. I saw that tweet and I'm like, I don't think so. I mean, he certainly wasn't put under in the video that they posted.
It's not like they're bringing in a licensed anesthesiologist to the tattoo shop. That's what I'm saying. I hear you. I'm saying so. I
don't think he went under though. I mean, I did see the tweet that you saw though that said he went under. I don't think that's true though. I don't know where they got that. I hope it's not true.
That's what I'm saying. I hope that part of it's not true.
Anybody in the chat have a bunch of tattoos? Did you even think about going under? I don't think that. I don't think that's a thing.
I can't even imagine how do you put somebody under at a tattoo shop? If that shit's going on, please let me know. Because
I don't know.
That's
well, Prince says a lot of people are dying from that shit. Prince, I'm not sure if you're a tattoo guy or not, but a lot. This JV
because I would not. If that's the case, I'm just saying, if that's the case, I would not be happy if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles. I can't imagine it's the case. Like I can't. What is some whack job just putting you under? What I hope that's not the case. But anyway,
people are saying when you get big, he did get a big. It was across his whole chest. So.
Like who's doing it though?
I don't know. I'm with you. It sounds sketchy. The tattoo shop is putting them
incredibly sketchy. Like you always hear about those women who try to get butt implants and from Puerto Rico, and they're down at the airport hotel. There's a legitimate story. And die.
We got BBL mentions on the show today. We're off the rails already.
Well, I just mean if I'm the Eagles and I don't know about that, I'm fucking pissed off about that.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's all I'm saying. I hope it's not true. But
yeah,
I don't know.
I'm with that. I mean,
as far as the tattoos, yeah, I don't get it, but I don't give a shit. If you want tattoos, go get tattoos.
Back to the original point, though, you were talking about how you mentioned that to him in the locker room. I brought up the tattoos just because I saw it on my feed yesterday.
Yeah, well, yeah, so did I. And I went, no way is he going under. And if he is, again, somebody needs to explain that to me. But as far as saving the season, yeah, because I've thought it like nobody wants to talk about it. And I get it from a fan base perspective. They don't want to talk about negative things, blah, blah, blah.
Well, like you said, though, I do think there's like a level of, well, that can happen in any game. I mean, football's the margin for error in football games is not particularly big. So there could be,
No, but I'm not talking about the play. I'm talking about the mentality of the fan base changes if that play goes in a negative direction. Yes,
well,
it happens.
Of course, the result would dictate that for sure.
But I'm just saying that's how close it was to everybody complaining about the passing game. Now they're pretending that there were no issues because ultimately they went on and performed. There's recency bias. They were tremendous against Washington, tremendous against Kansas City. And so all the negative stuff recedes to the background. But I mean, the Carolina game, I believe that was the AJ passing game.
Was that the game? Because that was before the Pittsburgh game. The Pittsburgh game, they came out and threw it like crazy.
Yeah, passing, where AJ got picked on, but Devontae said it, Lane said it, Jordan said it, Jalen said it.
Let me see if it was the Panthers game. It was the Panthers game. Yep, they won that game 22-16. Jalen had 108 yards passing in that game.
Yeah, I mean,
by the way, as we talk about this, did you hear Malik Neighbors on that podcast talking about receivers being divas?
I did not.
You would like that, because that was a logical explanation of why receivers are divas and why they don't give a shit about being divas. He's like, we grind all week at practice. All right, we read every route a cornerback makes, and then there's 6 to 8 moments average that we get where we can get the ball per week, and that's how we get paid. That's how we get contracts. That's how we feed our family. That's how we have success in this sport. And if I get open and I'm not getting the ball, you're damn right I get pissed off about it. I only got so many of these opportunities every week, and I think that makes sense to me. Like, these guys are human beings, right?
Well, yeah, I've been saying it. I mean, who wants? I say it all the time. Who wants a receiver that doesn't want the football? I would run away from that guy. Like, they're basically the good receivers are the 30-point scorers on an NBA team. Like, they want the football. Duh. So, there's different levels, obviously. I don't consider HA to be a diva at all. Some people do. Antonio Brown, he's a diva. Terrell Owens, he's a diva.
Here's the quote. Let me read you the quote, because I paraphrased it too much. He says, "I'm not going to speak on all receivers." And then he says, "Eff it, I'm speaking on all receivers. We all feel the same way. We don't like not getting the ball. These coaches, when you tell a receiver he's going to get about 7 catches a game, we are calculating in our head, that's about 100 yards. I need that to get in the Pro Bowl. I need that to get in the bracket so I can get paid. You told me I was going to get the ball. I'm getting open and I'm not getting the pill. We've got a problem." Yeah, receivers definitely are divas. We ain't playing about getting the ball.
Yeah, every good receiver wants the football. Said that for 100 years. I mean, if you're interviewing somebody in the draft, the receiver, and he said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I just want to block." You don't want that guy. You want the guy who wants the football, and all good receivers want the football. And that's. It's very hard to, the Eagles won basically, every game last year after the bye week, 16 of 17, and they should have won the other one. So that's pretty good. Nobody wants to be the guy that complains when you're winning every game. But when the minute it goes negative and you start losing a game or two, yeah, it can get ugly quickly. So can you continue at a pace of winning 16 of 17 games every year? I don't think that's sustainable. So, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games last year, and 8 if you want to include the playoffs, where Hurts was under 200 yards passing in the modern NFL. 8 games. Now, you don't want him to be over 300 or, even 280. Because that means you're behind. That means you're trying to, but you want to be in that 220, 230 range, I would say, with a run-centric offense. And those are the most, look at the most efficient games. I just pulled it up. So the Super Bowl, 221, where he left early. Washington, 246. Obviously, Kenny finished up in that game. The win over Washington in the regular season, 221. Jacksonville, 230. Dallas, 202. Cincinnati, 236, which was a good game. And then the outliers on the positive side, Green Bay shootout opener, 278. 311, New Orleans. A lot of that was the big play to Dallas Goedert late. I think that was his only 300-yard game, by the way. 264 Cleveland, 290 Pittsburgh, and maybe his best game in the regular season. And then, you had 158 against Tampa. Now, they didn't have AJ, Devontae, so who cares about that game? He had 114 against the Giants. win because the Giants are the Giants, but that's not acceptable in any case. 179 against the Rams, 118. He had a 3-week stretch, 179, 118, and 108. And that was when the frustration came out.
Right.
After that Carolina game, which was 108. And then they had the big game in Pittsburgh. And then even people forget because, again, you win the games. Green Bay, it was 131 in the playoffs. And the Rams, it was 128, but I remember distinctly it was 65 net because of all the sacks. That ain't typically good enough in the NFL. But you had a spectacular team that could win in other ways because of the rushing game and the number one ranked defense. So they proved they could win that way. And, but that doesn't mean you want to evolve. You don't want to evolve the passing.
Yeah, I agree completely. How much you think they will evolve? Because, I would also point to, how are Devontae and AJ going to feel if we have the same type of season this year? And
exactly
by the way, I said this yesterday because people will say it's on AJ and Devontae and they should shut up. I could argue if you had any two other star receivers in this team, it would have been a way bigger problem last year than those two made it be. They actually did a pretty damn good job at not making it a problem, I thought. Receivers want the ball. That's what they want. They kind of put the team first in a pretty large part of the season last year, I thought. Thought they could have been a lot worse about it.
Well, again, they're winning. So, when you're winning, unless you're a high-level diva, well, that's what I'll call the Antonio Browns and the TOs of the world,
Yeah, they care, but John, what do they care more about? Let me ask you this question. What do you think?
What I'm saying is, unless you're high-level diva, you're not going to complain when you're winning. That's what I'm saying. This
is my question. What does, in general, football players, do they care more about their team winning or do they care more about their personal contract and getting paid and those things?
Yeah, well, they want to get paid first.
Yeah. People care about themselves. You can't criticize them for that. They got to take care of themselves first. The team success is great. You're right. It covers a lot of things. But at the end of the day, these are grown men that are working a job.
Well, yeah. Well, my point, they wanted to complain, but they couldn't complain. Basically, I don't
know. I think
they did the best they could.
I think if that happens again this year, I think AJ is going to make a bigger stink about it.
Well, it depends. Are they winning or not? And by winning, you have to win 16 of 17. I'm not saying 10-4 or, through 14 games. I'm not saying 11-6 where you're still winning games. I'm saying you have to win every week and nobody's going to complain to a high level. You hear the occasional passing criticism when somebody, asked them after the Carolina game. That's as bad as it's going to get. If you start losing games, and I don't mean 3-14, I just mean lower than your expectations, and the expectations are incredibly high, obviously, with the Eagles now, then you're going to see it bubble up. And if they're not getting now, what also helps is they're already getting paid. That helps. They already signed their big contracts.
Yeah, they did.
Like if they were on their rookie deals,
big issue. Yeah,
big issue.
But the other thing that does come into it is there's a human element too, where like AJ thinks about what he's going to accomplish as a player in the league, how people are going to talk to him. Did he make the Pro Bowl last year or no, right?
I don't know if he made the Pro. He was second team All Pro again, which is more important.
Which is more important for sure. Did he not make the Pro Bowl? Yeah, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin. People don't care about that stuff, but that stuff does add up. And players do care about what they're able to do in the course of their career. Look at how you talk about any player that's a former player now. You bring up their stats, you bring up their accolades, you bring up what they accomplished. I think there's a human element here that fans leave out. Like, oh, well, they got paid. Yeah, they got paid, but there is more to it than that too.
Yeah, I mean, when you start talking about legacy and potential Hall of Fame players, that's what they get judged on. How many all-pro teams? How many all did they make the all-decade team? How many Pro Bowls? That's what they get judged on. So, yeah, it's an important part of it. But how many players reach that level? AJ's at that level. He's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. Still young. Still got to do it for a number of years.
I think AJ's a Hall of Fame talent. That's why I say this. I'm not saying this because I want to criticize the past. People get so mad you bring this up. AJ Brown is a.
I told you. That's what I tell you. They get so mad. They get so mad.
He's good enough to be in the Hall of Fame. If he doesn't feel like his talent is being used, that is natural for him to sit on the bench and be upset about it, or in the locker room after and say, I should be used more. I could go to the Hall of Fame. I'm that good. He is that good. Use him. And I wouldn't surprise me if he gets more upset this year.
Well, again, I think that depends on where the Eagles are. He's not going to complain at a high level if they're winning football games. He's not necessarily going to be happy. And he wants the football like any high-level receiver. But for the most part, he's going to stay quiet as long as they win. And that's why it would have been an interesting experiment if the Rams upset them, because the whole city would have been on fire. And all anybody would be talking about is the lack of effectiveness of the passing game. And how could the passing game with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, et cetera, be this poor? That's all anybody would be talking about. And now they don't want to talk about it at all. It's bizarre to me. But yeah, when you have the group of receivers that the Eagles do, and you're as inconsistent as they were, not to mention I haven't brought up the offensive line. You have the best offensive line. You have the best running back. You have that group of receivers, and you're that inconsistent passing the football. In a lot of ways, I mean, Kellen Moore is the perfect example of this versus Brian Johnson. Take the players out of it. It is astonishing to me that, like, Kellen Moore wouldn't have been on anybody's list if the Eagles lose that game to the Rams. Probably wouldn't even gotten it. You never say never, because he had gotten interviews before in Dallas, and he was already a high profile name, but I don't think he would have been a hot candidate at all because of the way the Eagles offense performed in the regular season. I mean, at all. But they won the Super Bowl and everything. And meanwhile, Brian Johnson is shit canned. And they had a much better passing offense in 2023. Much better. But they didn't win because their defense was shitty. The running game was good, not to the historic level. But the defense was god awful. And they had the collapse, and that's, somebody's got to pay for it. And, Brian's one of the guys who had to pay for it. But that's how quickly things can turn in the NFL. I mean, he would have been a head coach if, with that same passing offense, with that defense that Vic Fangio, Brian Johnson would be a head coach in the NFL. If he had Vic Fangio's defense in 2023.
I agree.
So, I mean,
winning really does cure all, though, because I have a hard time believing how any rational person, forget being a fan, any rational person would say you have A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith, and you have Jalen Hurts, all of who are top paid in their league, in their category, in their position group, and are top players in the NFL. and you're bottom 5 in passing? Like, that just doesn't make sense. That I don't get how people wouldn't look at that and say, oh yeah, and we want more out of that. That's certainly how I think the Eagles are looking at it. But again, we're getting grilled over here in the chat because everybody's all mad. Like, I don't understand.
I'm surprised. Like, you were pushing back on me. I've been getting this for. I mean, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody, but they think you're disrespectful. I love that word. They think you're. All the Eagles are going to do in the offseason when these OTAs start up on field, and all you're going to be hear about from the people that are there about passing game, evolve the passing game, get better, get more efficient in the passing game, blah, blah, blah. Same thing happened last year. That's all you talked about when Kellen Moore's going to scheme up this and Kellen Moore's going to do this and motion. No, nobody gives a shit about motion. They had no inventiveness or creativity in their offense whatsoever last year, the same as the year prior. But they were really effective because they had a really good offensive line and they could block people. And they have really good players that could get open on their own. They didn't do any jack shit of what anybody wanted. And nobody cares because they won. And there's nothing wrong with being simple. If you're as effective as the Eagles, nothing wrong with. In fact, I would encourage it. If you're winning that way, less opportunity for mistakes, and you saw the ball security. It just makes sense. But every team doesn't have the number 1 ranked defense that's not allowing Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid to get past the 50-yard line for 9 consecutive drives. That's quite the luxury.
All right, so what do you think it looks like this year? Think it looks different than it did last year? You think it's more balanced? What's your expectation for the offense this year? I understand you said they think they're going to run. They are. They got Saquon Barkley in the best O-line in football still.
They're going to scale
does it shift at all, in your opinion, this year?
They're going to try to shift it, but they're going to spend the entire offseason, the OTAs and training camp, trying to get the passing game more efficient. And then when week 1 arrives, they will do whatever they have to do to win a football game. In my estimation, a lot of it depends on the defense. Where's the defense?
Yeah, right.
Like, if you have to throw the ball, you have to throw the ball. So to me, it's not about numbers. It's about effectiveness. But, by general, it's like, all right, one of the best quotes I ever heard from a scout, he was talking about former Eagles linebacker, still in the league, by the way, Eric Wilson, who had a big season coming off from a statistical standpoint. He had a big season on a bad defense, bunch of interceptions for a linebacker. And he called him, the exact terminology was 20-point scorer on a bad NBA team. Somebody's got to score on a bad NBA team, even the worst ones. So to me, it's not about volume. If you're losing games and you have to pass the ball because you're losing, you're going to have more yardage, more touchdowns, probably have more interceptions too. So it's not about volume. It's about these low water marks, the 65 net yards passing, the Carolina. It's about these that are just unacceptable.
Now, the one thing I will say that the Eagles that the Eagles do deserve credit for is that there weren't many instances, like you pointed out, the games that are too low, and I agree with you, they're too low, but they didn't need to pass in those games, right? The running game was successful, and they rode that, and they won.
Well, I mean,
there were certain games, though, John, where they needed to pass the ball. The Pittsburgh game, I think Saquon had 65 yards. The Super Bowl, Saquon had 50-something yards. And they answered the bell. Jalen Hurts had his best game of the season passing the ball, I thought, in the Super Bowl and versus Pittsburgh. He had 290, I think, versus Pittsburgh, and obviously he did what he did in the Super Bowl. So when you did need it, it was there. And I think that is a feather in their cap, and they should be able to rely on that. My question would be, if it's needed on a more consistent basis, do you feel as though they'll be able to answer that call? I think they will, but I'm curious to see.
Yeah, I can't say that with 100%. I mean, again, if you're talking about the 20th ranked defense or even the 15th ranked defense versus the first ranked defense, you're going to have more opportunities to shit the bed if you're not effective in the passing game. Can they elevate it? Yes, if they play like they played against Pittsburgh, to your point, of course, you know. But that's the outlier. Like, that's literally his best game of the season, I think, by a pretty significant margin. Just
He was
from
excellent. He was really good in that game.
just
Hip Hop says, what's more consistent than winning the Super Bowl, Xander? Hip Hop, I'm more talking about if teams come in and game plan more for Saquon Barkley because they have more on tape. Spags did take him away in the final game. Like, if they come in and they stack the box and say, beat me through the air, can you do it week in and week out? That's the question. I don't think I'm being unfair, Hip Hop.
look, I say it all the time with quarterback evaluation. The Super Bowl breaks people. It breaks people. They lose all objectivity. Oh, well, they won the Super Bowl. So you can't say anything. Period. Well, they won the Super Bowl. Well, that's not how the Eagles approach it. And if they did, you wouldn't be very happy because they know they can't stand still. They know they need to increase. They went into last season. I think everybody can acknowledge at least that they went into last season trying to improve the passing game. That's why they fired Brian Johnson and Alex Tanney. And that's why they hired Kellen Moore. And all anybody talked about in the offseason with me was, well, what do you see? What do you see Kellen Moore scheme this up? What do you see this? What do you see?
I was one of them. Remember, we used to fight about motion and all the things Kellen
All
Moore.
the
No,
we don't fight about they ran more motion because it was tough to not run more motion, but they certainly weren't the LA Rams, you know, because they scaled back. They tried to be early. They were trying, and it didn't work. And they scaled back. The story has been told 100 times. They were 2-2. And by the way, I thought it was unfair coming off the Tampa Bay game, which is their worst game, but it was their worst game because they didn't have A.J. Brown. They didn't have Devontae Smith. They didn't have Lane Johnson.
That game was crazy. In hindsight,
it was about 1,000,000 degrees. They weren't prepared to play in that weather. It was just awful. It was an awful performance, awful game, but it was also understandable because of the circumstances. And I thought at the time, the Eagles panicked by saying, all right, this isn't working. We got to completely scale back and turn into what they now in hindsight, they were right because they lost one game and they shouldn't even lost that game by scaling back and just playing conservatively and running the football and riding Saquon Barkley.
Man, the more we talk about this, the more I think about Brian Johnson being completely and utterly scapegoated from this football team. Do you think Brian Johnson was a better offensive coordinator than Kellen Moore here? Now, again, the success thing comes in, right? Everyone's going to say, "Oh, we won the Super Bowl with Kellen." But Brian Johnson didn't have Saquon Barkley.
I do.
You think Brian Johnson was better?
I do. For that reason.
They were pretty comparable.
For that reason. Well, they're pretty comparable statistically. 8th and 8th overall.
I mean, Kellen, a lot of people already no, hell no.
Well, exactly.
Kellen did get Saquon Barkley, and he didn't really evolve the offense.
And number one defense. Brian didn't have Saquon Barkley, and he had the 31st ranked passing defense. I mean, guys, open your minds.
I had no problem with Brian Johnson. I like Brian Johnson, but I don't know if he's better than Kellen. I just posed the question to you because I think it's an interesting.
I think Kellen himself was who I love and I think is one of the greatest and has taught me more about defensive football than I think anybody on the planet. Even, hopefully Vic will surpass that, but, he's only been here 1 year. Jim Schwartz was not happy after Super Bowl 52. He's not happy to this day.
Yeah.
Because his defense played so poorly
500
on the
yards
biggest
today.
stage.
Yeah.
I know Kellen Moore was not happy with the way things developed last year. Is he happy about winning the Super? Sure. But they didn't come in with the plan that the plan ended up being. You can go back. You can all pretend you don't remember. But all our shows are archived. You can go back to anywhere you want to read, Philadelphia Inquirer, anywhere. Look back to the off-season stuff. Look back to the quotes and what people are talking about and talking about the evolution of the passing game. And we need to do this and all the discussions we had here about all the motion and this and this and this is going to happen. And none of it happened. It was the exact same offense. So even scale back to be more conservative because of the success of Saquon Barkley. Even more, I used to laugh at people that Saquon's going to be the slot receiver. They're going to put him out in the slot. They're going to put him out wide. They're going to do this.
It was one of our first debates ever when I started doing the show. It was Saquon Barkley in the passing game. I'm saying Saquon's going to catch balls out of the backfield. You were ripping me, and you were right, obviously.
All forgotten because winning cures winning a Super Bowl.
All right, so let's move ahead to 2025 season. Is Kevin Patullo equipped to handle this Lamborghini that he has taken over? All right, this is a rookie play caller. This is a rookie offensive coordinator. And John, this isn't a Lamborghini. This is an F1 car. John, is he equipped to drive it?
Well, he's equipped. The question is, like I said, if it were up to Nick, he would have been the offensive coordinator after Shane left. I firmly believe that the first time they were concerned, and they were going to lose Brian Johnson to another job elsewhere if they didn't promote him. So that was part of the reason. And then, Jeffrey pretty much insisted they had to go outside the organization after the scapegoating of 2023. So, he's more comfortable. Nick's more comfortable with Kevin than anybody else. I don't think he's overmatched for the job by any instance. And, I think it'll look very similar to what it did last year and the year prior and the year prior to that, because the offense is built around the quarterback. And that's why it looks so similar each year. Not talking about success, talking about how they play.
Right.
So it's going to look similar. And there's nothing wrong with that because they've been tremendously successful. But yeah, and they want to evolve the passing game. And if you're asking me, will they be better than the 29th ranked passing? Yes. But why will they be better? That's the question. Or will they just be better because they got better or because the defense is worse and they have to throw the football more and there's a higher volume? My guess is the main reason they will be much higher is because the defense will not be as good and they will have to throw the ball more. The question is how much of that is effective versus how much of that is just chasing the dragon. I'm trying to get back in football games.
Right. Who's going to be the face of the offense this year?
Saquon.
I agree. All right, good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Good offensive segment. We're gonna have Devin Jackson. All right, so we'll get off this topic. I know a lot of people don't like this topic, John, but it does get the people talking. Anwan checks in. What's up, brother? This offense going to be a copy and paste of last year with a few twinks. I like that word, a few twinks.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been a copy and paste since 2021. Right. I've always said, we got 4 seasons of Jalen Hurts as a starting quarterback. If I were the rate, and I've already done this, so I'll do it again. 2022 was his best season. 2023 was this is personal, was his second best season. Last year was his third best season. His first season as a starter was number 4. That upsets people. I don't know why, but that upsets people.
Amwan, thanks for the super chat, bro. I appreciate that, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody being here. Hit that like button. All right. Plenty of stuff to talk about here. For the people who struggle with or don't like those conversations, we're going to have them here. All right. We got 2-hour show a day all through the offseason. All right. So we're going to be good. We're going to talk about everything here, whether you like it or you don't like it. If you disagree, you're free to leave your comments in the chat below, and I will address some of them. So we appreciate all you guys being here. Hit that like button. Zeal says, Xander, do you know what a twink is? I can't say I do, other than a Twinkie, like the food. Is there something I'm missing here, Real Zeal? You can let me know. But Anwan dropped it in the super chat, which means I'm rating it. All right. So good stuff, everybody. Appreciate it. We'll take our commercial break. We'll be right back in 3 minutes with Devin Jackson coming up next.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz and Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
Your financial future is on the line. Are you ready for what's next? At Leone & Company Wealth Management, we help young professionals, business owners, and pre-retirees navigate the complexities of building and protecting wealth. For young professionals, we'll help you grow your wealth, plan for your future, and make the most of your hard-earned dollars. For business owners, we provide strategies to protect your company, manage risks, and create a lasting legacy for both your business and personal wealth. For pre-retirees, we'll design a plan to secure your retirement, ensuring you can live comfortably and confidently in your next chapter. Whether you're just starting out, managing a thriving business, or preparing for retirement, we're here to help you take control of your financial future. The first consultation is on us. Get the advice you need without the cost. Let's make your financial vision a reality. Take the next step. Scan the QR code to schedule your free consultation today. And of course, go Birds.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
In our hometown, we all look out for each other. We step up to keep our communities going strong. And at Independence Blue Cross, we're here to keep you going strong as the #1 health insurer in the region. No IBX is always looking out for you.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Barrett's 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mack, and we're joined now by Devin Jackson. You can follow him on X at RealD_Jackson. Over on X, he does all his draft work for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Devin, great work for the draft, brother. It comes and it goes quick, but it's the end of a long road of you preparing for the NFL draft. How you doing on this Tuesday morning, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me back on, guys. I'm always looking forward to talking through the draft and, kind of reviewing the class now, almost a few weeks out.
Yeah, you took us through the draft, so I want to get your thoughts on the end game and what the Eagles were able to do. And we'll start with the top pick overall, and that's JAKIB Campbell. It's funny to me, Devin. The first thing Howie said basically after the pick was he didn't want to put this player in a box, and everything everybody's tried to do after that is try to put this player in a box. What was your evaluation of JAKIB Campbell? Because Howie did play up his pass rushing ability a whole heck of a lot.
Yeah, I could see why he would play up his pass rush ability, considering that's where he played in high school and early in his career in Alabama. But yeah, I really like the player in JAKIB Campbell. I was surprised that he was there at 31, just because he felt like a guy coming out of the NFL Combine, the way that he tested, the way that he moved as an athlete, and you combine that with his tape, it seemed like he was going to be a top 15, top 20 pick. And everything that I heard out of the combine is that the Tampa Bay Bucks were, prepared to draft him at 19 overall. But obviously, the shoulder surgery, caused him to go down the board a little bit, and maybe some of the other health things he has going on related. But yeah, I love the player. I love the pick. I think he's a player that I think how he said as much that he's going to start in the inside linebacker room, but I think there's some flexibility there if you want to use him in kind of, some of the blitz packages, maybe have him standing up off the edge and rushing off the edge. I think as a pass rusher, I mean, he's more of a speed guy right now. I don't think he's quite refined really in that role. He hasn't played it full time and played significant snaps there since high school. So it'll take a little bit of more development, I think, if you really want to use him off the edge. Even as soon as next year. But I think overall the player is really good. The value that you got in him also in the first round was really good. And, hometown kid, guy coming back home. So I think we have all those things combined that, it's a really good first round pick and a player that I'm excited to see how the Eagles use in Vic Fangio's defense.
Devin, I want to ask you, let's just assume for a second that JAKIB Campbell is healthy for this exercise. All right, the Eagles run a lot of nickel. Who comes off the field for JAKIB Campbell to get on? Is it Nakobe Dean? Let's assume they're all healthy. Is it Nakobe Dean? Do you see him lining up where one of the guys on the front would be, maybe a Jalix Hunt? Where do you see him lining up in that nickel defense when you have 5 defensive backs in the field?
I think in nickel, he's probably a linebacker. I could see him coming in for Nakobe Dean. I just think he's right now a better player in coverage than Nakobe Dean. Not to say that Nakobe Dean isn't a good player, and he can again get into those coverage drops, but we saw how well Zach Bond played last year, and he's a non-negotiable to he's staying on the field for sure.
Right.
And I also think it might have I think the secondary is going to be a little interesting depending on who wins the CB2 spot, opposite of Quinyon Mitchell, because Cooper DeJean was so good at nickel. So I would surmise it'll be Nakobe Dean or maybe one of the guys. Maybe Cooper DeJean is still in the nickel. Maybe they bump out outside corner, but I think in the boxes is most likely where JAKIB Campbell will be in nickel, just because I think that's where he's most comfortable at right now. And maybe they'll get a little creative, assuming that he's healthy, and maybe in camp he shows some more pass rushing shots. But right now I would say probably coming in for Nakobe Dean in those packages.
If it's Zach Bond and JAKIB Campbell, And whether that's 2025 or 2026, because, he might not have an off season, and it might take a while to ramp up for Jod. But whenever it gets to that, who's the Mike linebacker?
I think Zach Bond's the Mike linebacker in that scenario.
Yeah, that would be my estimation as well.
So it doesn't seem like it's good for Nakobe Dean. I know we mentioned like he wasn't drafted to replace Nakobe, but in order to get him on the field, it feels like Nakobe's got to come off.
Well, if he's playing linebacker, yeah. Now, what's interesting to me, and I've looked at it, and I want to throw the Van Ginkel reference at you, because people have looked at the way Vic used Andrew Van Ginkel, Devin in Miami. It was more, he plays stack linebacker, but he plays off the edge. He played as a flat defender, played as a joker inside rusher. Long term. Now, we know you got to build up to that. There are very few people in the NFL that can play that many roles. There aren't a lot of players that do that. Does he have that versatility to where, let's say on 1st and 10, he's playing weak side linebacker? If it's 3rd and long, he might be a joker as an inside rusher, might be an edge rusher, but he'll be on the field for 3 downs like Van Ginkel. Does he have that kind of versatility long term?
I think so. I think when you looked at the Alabama tape, a lot of those kind of characteristics kind of showed up where, on 1st and 2nd down, he'd be inside the box, but he'd be on the line of scrimmage on 3rd down, in the interior over the center, off of the tackle, on the tackle's outside shoulder, and rushing the passer on 3rd downs, So at Alabama, you could kind of see some of that usage and some of the vision that, we know he's a really good linebacker. He can fly, sideline to sideline. He can drop into coverage and play some man coverage in some spots against tight ends. But he also can get after the passer and rush as a passer. I don't think he was quite as effective just because I think he was more so trying to occupy a player and occupy a blocker versus like actually letting loose and trying to rush the passer and on some of those situations, just because depending on the blitz package, depending on the game that you're running up front, sometimes you're just picking a player so someone else can get free. But in those instances that he did actually rush the passer, you could see the speed off the edge, his ability to turn the corner, and I think it'll be in the Eagles' best interest not to just use him as an inside linebacker, but getting some value and blitzing him on 3rd downs as well to kind of mix it up. But if you need him to drop in the coverage, he can do so. So I think he's a player that you just come in with a defined plan and you want to be able to give different looks to offenses. So it's harder to game plan against him. And you have Zach Bond, potentially next to him to be more that steady presence in the middle of the field. I think that opens up the versatility aspect of Campbell's game.
It's going to be interesting to see. Devin, talk to me about the 2nd-round pick, Andrew McCoo, a safety out of Texas. Obviously, we had a great season at Texas last year in the SEC. They picked him at 64. There was a couple other safeties still on the board, notably Kevin Winston from Penn State and that Notre Dame safety, Xavier Watts. But what did you think of that pick, and what do you think of that player here for the Eagles?
Yeah, Andrew McCoo was one of my favorite players in the draft process, and a player that actually mocked to the Eagles in my last mock draft, just because I felt like he made a lot of sense to what the Eagles are looking for at safety. McCoo is a guy that played mostly nickel at Clemson before he transferred to Texas in his final season in college, and you could see kind of that experience showing up, especially defending the run and coming up and flying downhill to make tackles in the run game, but also in the coverage ability too. He's a guy that can come down across the line of scrimmage and come down within that 10 to 15 area and make plays on the football. I think he had 5 interceptions last year, and a playmaker in that secondary, and a guy that, despite, being sub 200 pounds, he's incredibly physical, can come downhill, can make tackles in space, and can cover the deep thirds of the field, deep halves. So I like the player, and even relative to where he was taken and some of the other players on the board. I think Makuba was a better athlete than Xavier Watson obviously had more playing experience than Kevin Winston Jr. So I think he's more of a sure bet than maybe some of those other players that he was taken ahead of. And obviously, I know the weight is going to be a big concern. Just kind of the style of play that he plays with, but he's a reliable player. I don't think he missed many games, if any at all, in college with injuries, and a player that despite his size, can make all the plays on the back end and kind of shore up that defense. As a run defender and pass coverage.
Day 3, Devin, I thought it was very exciting. The Eagles had a lot of volume, a lot of picks, ended up taking 8 different players. You probably saw their little unscripted show where they showed the war room, a little bit of their, what they call their passion meeting, where different scouting execs, talk up players and who they really want to pound the table for. So a lot of guys they were looking at. Start off day 3 with your highest ceiling player and also the one with the highest floor, the one who's just solid.
I would say highest ceiling. I have to go to Cameron Williams, a tackle from Texas, just because he was a guy that, I mean, even outside of me, I had him inside my top 100, but a lot of people did. A lot of people thought that he would go in that 3rd, 4th round area, and to get him in round 6, and to get him after the Eagles already took another offensive tackle, I thought was tremendous value, and a player that is only 21 years old, only had 16 starts in his college career, and really truly a ball of clay that can be molded into a really good player. You see the tools he has, the size, the arm length, and even some of the surprising mobility at his size too. Just a guy that really is truly inexperienced, but I think also a guy that you're not going to really be counting on for at least a few seasons, and you can take some time to develop under Jeff Stoutland. And anytime that the Eagles take offensive linemen, especially that late in the draft, and a guy that was at least highly thought of, in the draft community, I think that speaks volumes, and you just know that Stoutland is going to get the best out of him. So I would go highest ceiling for him in that particular pick. Highest floor, I'm gonna go Kyle McCord, because I think he is a guy that's kind of what you want as a potential backup, a guy that's not scared of the moment, not scared to throw the football around and make plays with his arm downfield, and just kind of have that fearless mindset. He played really fearless his final year at Syracuse, a hometown guy as well, a player that I think at some point in his career I could see him starting games. I don't think necessarily for the Eagles, but I think he can develop into a nice backup. And I'm assuming that Tanner McKee is either going to get traded or signed somewhere else, potentially to compete for a starting spot, just because I think that's kind of the trajectory he's on, over the next few years. So I think McCord was taken to kind of be the potential long-term backup, and I really like the player. I think what you're getting is a guy that can come in and you're going to have a drop off no matter if you lose a starting quarterback, or even in this case a second string. But him coming in, I feel okay with him running the offense, knowing that he has confidence in himself, and a player that doesn't have all the physical maybe tools that some of the early round quarterbacks typically do, but the confidence and moxie he plays with, I think, I could see him, being a long-term backup in Philly.
Good stuff there. I'm going to ask you about a fan favorite, Devin, is Ty Robinson. Everybody seems to love this guy. I loved this guy when they picked him. What do you think of the pick? What do you think of the player? I happen to think he's my guy who I have the highest floor at. I think he's going to be a contributor year 1. Maybe that's lofty. I know he's a 4th round draft pick. What do you see in Ty Robinson for the Eagles?
Yeah, he's a guy that's high effort player, just continuously working to get involved in the play, in an explosive player. I mean, you saw his testing at the NFL Combine, one of the the best tester relative to his size. He's just so powerful. He has powerful hands. Plays with kind of a reckless abandon. Very physical at the point of attack, and then finishing on plays and sacking the quarterback, and really had a big jump this year in his production and a productive player, and beat some really good offensive linemen over the course of the season. He had a solid game against Ohio State and some of the interior presence that they have, like Devin Jackson, who was taken in the first round by the Vikings, and a player that I think it continued to get better over the course of his college career and found some nice consistency in his final season at Nebraska. I do think that he was played because he was played a little bit all over the defensive line. I think he might have been miscast at times, especially when he played like nose and one technique, really deep on the inside. But I think he's a guy that's probably going to play more 3 technique at the NFL level, and I do think he can be a contributor as well for the Eagles defense, and give him some more pass rushing juice in that defensive line room.
One guy, I think, if you look at all these guys, and you just talked about Ty a little bit, we'll talk about Smile Munden a little bit, Drew Kendall, Miles Hinton, their fathers, Antoine Powell Ryland, his production at the college level. The one guy I can't get a beat on from my perspective is Mac McWilliams. So I want to hear your thoughts on him and where he might project. Because if you look at the Eagles last year, yeah, Quinyon was great. Cooper was great. Slay was great. But they also, at times, Slay particularly, but also Quinyon late got a little bit banged up, and other guys had to play. Isaiah Rodgers had to play. Avonte Maddox had to play at times. They had to use a lot of defensive backs. They have to repopulate. They lost 4 of them. If you add CJ into the mix with Slay, Rodgers, Maddox, they got to repopulate that secondary, Devin. So Mac McWilliams is a guy who might have to play at some point. How did you grade him? How did you look at him as a prospect?
Yeah, he's a guy that, has nickel and outside corner experience, and a player that, was extremely adept at getting his hands on the football. He didn't really have any interception totals this past year at UCF, but a player that I thought was at his best in zone coverage, and playing kind of the off zone coverage as well, making plays on the football in front of him, and disrupting at the catch point. I think he's probably more of a nickel because of his size. I think he's only like 5'10" at the NFL level, and I thought there were some snaps that he could do a little bit of both. I thought he was a really good and sound tackler in the open field. They would try to throw screens at him. He would blow up those screens, and I think it's going to suit him well as a potential versatile player in the secondary, in the depth piece at least. He could play on the outside if you need him to in a pinch, but I think he's probably could be the backup nickel. And maybe you cross-train him at safety as well, and kind of have a built-in Avonte Maddox replacement. That's how I kind of view him, as a guy that can bring that depth, can play a few different, secondary roles and for the Eagles secondary. And, I think he's probably going to be a special teams contributor, at least in year one, and maybe he can continue to build off of that. But I think he's probably going to be a backup nickel. Would be my guess what he does in the fall.
Going to be interesting to see on him. Devin, one of my favorite picks in the draft, and maybe I'm falling for it, I don't know, you tell me, is their final pick, Antoine Powell Ryland. I mean, anytime someone puts up 25.5 sacks, I can't just glaze over that. Now, I know he's got some questions about the measurables, some of those things. I thought a great dart throw in round 6 there with that draft pick. What do you think of Antoine Powell Ryland out of Virginia Tech?
Yeah, it was a guy that I think was only there because of, his I think 34.25-inch arms,
Yeah,
and I get it. Yeah, I get that. But, he was an incredibly productive player. I think when I was, watching him in the fall, that I heard he had 3 games of 4 or more sacks in his career, which is kind of insane to think about, considering, him getting a bead on snap counts and turning the corner and using that speed that he has to turn the corner. I do think he's probably mostly going to be a pass rushing specialist type of player, which I think is valuable to have in an edge rushing room, just because you need guys that specialize in things. And I think he specializes in getting after the passer. And I think he could be, it's going to be tough to get snaps in this current iteration of the Eagles rotation, but I think if you give him some time and give him some ability to show what he can do off the edge, I could see him being used in package in kind of those NASCAR packages that teams like to use sometimes, where you put just all pass rushers on the field. And
right.
I think he could be a nice addition as and kind of complement to the pass rushing room, because I think he's a pure speed rusher, a guy that once he beats you around the corner, he's going to close and finish plays. And it was really exciting to see, during the fall. And I think that ability alone is going to be able to translate at the NFL level despite the short arms.
Yeah, I think you mentioned those 4-sack games. He was the first to do it at Virginia Tech since Bruce Smith. And we found out he's got a relationship with Bruce. Bruce has been helping him out. That always scares me, because I remember the Derek Barnett to Reggie White comparisons at Tennessee.
Right.
And everybody's bringing up poor APR with, as I dubbed him, bringing him up with Bruce Smith. I don't think he's going to be Bruce Smith, but hopefully he can be a contributor to the Philadelphia Eagles moving forward. The two, and I asked Howie about this after day 3, the two sort of genetics prospects, Drew Kendall and Miles Hinton, their fathers were really good NFL players. In the case of Chris Hinton, one of the best offensive linemen I've ever seen. Doesn't necessarily translate either, but boy, Jeff Stoughton was really happy when the Eagles got Miles Hinton. And Drew Kendall, I made a lot of, and I don't know if you heard how we talk about centers and how so many teams just say, all right, this guy can't play guard, let's move him to center. And snapping the football is not a natural trait, Howie said. And Drew Kendall can do it. All he did was play center at Boston College. Those two picks I'm just interested in, because everybody calls this a genetics league. And if it is, I think Drew Kendall and Miles Hinton have a chance.
Yeah, they're both really good players, really solid players. With Drew Starman and Drew Kendall, I think he's just reliable. He gets blocks done. He's not a guy that's going to be overly flashy and make any crazy blocks. But I think when you're looking for a guy that can step in and give them a little bit more flexibility along the offensive line, we saw obviously Landon Dickerson had to move over to the center with Cam Jerkins a little banged up during the playoff run. I think it's incredibly valuable to have a guy that can be a backup center. I know they took Dylan McMahon last year in last year's draft, and he just didn't quite work out for the Eagles. And I think mostly because of his size, but I think Drew Kendall, you talk about the NFL bloodlines, you talk about a player that was, I believe he was a 4-year starter at Boston College, and a player that's just really consistent on a down and down basis. I think Miles Hinton is a little bit more interesting because he is a massive player, has exactly all the tools that you're looking for in a player, and a guy that I think, just needs more refinement in his technique and just continue to round up his game. I thought just at times, on his film, he was played a little high, gave up the edge a little bit quickly. So I think getting coached by Stoutland is going to be beneficial for both players, but especially Miles Hinton, just because I think there's still some more potential to untap with Hinton. And I think he's a guy that maybe they cross-train him at guard and tackle and see what they can get out of him at both spots. I think I could see, I could see it with both Cameron Williams and Miles Hinton that they cross-train both of those guys just because,
he has a history of doing that. Scout, the big bodies inside, and they both talked about it when we were talking to him before rookie camp. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles try one of those two at right guard down the road, at least. Maybe not this year, but guess it'll take a while. But I mean, they like those big, powerful bodies inside more than other teams. You see it with Mekhi Becton. So if you're going to move Mekhi Becton, you can move anybody inside because that guy blocks out the sun. So that'll be interesting. And the last guy we haven't talked about, which is interesting because he's my favorite pick of day 3, and that's Smile Munden. I just think if he stays healthy, this is a starting level linebacker eventually, not early, but he's got starting potential to be in this league for a long time. Your thoughts on Smile Munden?
Yeah, he was a player that I think, injuries kind of derailed him a little bit in his college career, especially this final season at Georgia. But when he was on the field, he's a guy that brings a lot of coverage outside. A player that could find routes developing behind him and in front of him. Could find his drops. Really a reliable tackler inside the box, and player that I really liked in the draft process and thought obviously he was a little overlooked because he was a little banged up in his final season at Georgia, but a reliable player nonetheless. And I think he's going to find some special team snaps early on in his Eagles tender. Just assuming that he's fully healthy now. But yeah, he flies around the football. Smart player. Obviously, the connections to some of the other Georgia players on the Eagles roster, and I'm really excited to see what he does. For a team like the Eagles that hasn't valued the linebacker position too often in recent years, for them to add a number of bodies into that room as of recently. Obviously signed Zach Bond, drafting Jeremiah Trotter Jr., drafting Jahad Campbell and Small Monday.
You can tell Vic showed up.
Yeah, exactly. You saw a lot of Vic in this draft. Make sure you guys follow Devin at @RealD_Jackson. Devin, just a couple questions left for you. We appreciate the time. Great breakdown of the Eagles draft. By the way, before I ask you a question about the overall draft, how was Green Bay? I saw your tweet of your picture out there. I love tweets like that where you kind of, live out a dream. Did Green Bay live up to the hype? People say Lambeau Field is a place you got to go. How was it out there in Green Bay?
It was actually really cool. I think I didn't know what to expect going into it, because I've been to Green Bay before, but just for the weekend and went to a game. But just overall, it was a great atmosphere. I mean, there was a point like 20 minutes before the draft started where they had to stop letting people in because it got to capacity. That's how excited everyone was to be there. Obviously the food scene is pretty good too as well in Green Bay. And then they had the red carpet inside of Lambeau Field, which was really, really cool. And I wouldn't even call it a red carpet. They had had like green field down basically for the quote unquote red carpet. But it was a really great scene. It was cool because the fans got to watch too. Some of the red carpet, even though they couldn't see the full thing, but they could watch from the stands and could do for free. And so it was a really cool environment, a really cool place to have it. And for as small as the city is, I thought they did a really good job hosting it.
Good stuff there. Devin, you cover the draft, man. You cover every guy leading up to it. Anything that was just, you didn't expect, you didn't see coming? Maybe it's Shedeur Sanders falling to the 5th. Anything overall in the draft, not Eagles based, that just surprised you in this year's draft?
Yeah, I thought that the running back run was going to happen a little bit earlier than it did. A guy like Caleb Johnson lasting to pick 83 with the Steelers was a little bit surprising. And honestly, I was a little surprised that the Eagles didn't take a running back, just in general, even with
how about
one of those
tight end
picks.
Yeah.
That too. Yeah. But I think that with the tight end aspect, so many went off the board after their first round pick. So really in that day 2 run of tight ends, I think kind of took them out of contention to take a tight end. And then from there, it was interesting to kind of watch them operate, because then it felt like they're all right. You don't take a tight end. Obviously, they're going to take an offensive lineman here in the round 3. Then they have a couple trade backs and and just don't take anyone in round 3. So I think just overall how the draft kind of the ebbs and flows of it. Obviously, the Shedeur Sanders storyline was pretty big, but just in general, I thought there was a long run in between quarterbacks. I know that, and then like Dylan Gabriel going third round was a big surprise too. So you really just don't know like how highly these teams value some of these players. So I thought it was interesting some of the landing spots that they ended up in. And then some of them it just made sense. Like Nick Emmanwori going to Seattle, you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, and them trading up to get him. But I think probably the overarching surprise from round 1, I would say, is the Falcons giving up a future first round pick to go and get James Pierce.
Yeah,
I think
we're all talk about that one. Yeah,
they're all flabbergasted by that. Not that I mean, I like James Pierce, but boy, they gave up a lot to get back in the first round. Oof. What'd you think, by the way, Devin? Real quick, last one at @RealD_Jackson. Make sure you follow him on X. Read him at the Philadelphia Inquirer. Does a tremendous job covering the NFL draft. Did you hear any whispers out there? A lot of people thought the Eagles were going to take Shedeur Sanders at 145, and all of a sudden here comes Cleveland back up to take him at 144. And further bolstered by the Eagles did take a quarterback later in the draft. Any whispers about that? Anything from that aspect of it?
Yeah, I had no clue, honestly. I know there was like some pre-draft whispers that maybe the Eagles will like Jalen Milroe, but nothing on Shedeur Sanders. And like I would not have expected them to take Shedeur, even with the Browns trading up. Like I didn't think they were a contender to take him, but when it's that late in the draft, I mean, it's
I think that's one of those things.
Yeah,
it got so late. Yeah,
I was gonna say it's probably one of those things they at least discussed, or at least entertain the idea, But
how taken aback were you by that, the Shedeur thing, falling to the 5th round?
I mean, I would say pretty decently, just because like I knew there was a good chance he probably wasn't going round 1, but then to see some of the other quarterbacks taken ahead of him, it was kind of the bigger surprise. Like, the Giants train back into round 1, take Jackson Dart. It's okay. You heard some of the rumblings about that potentially, and Tyler Shuck potentially going, on day 2, but Dylan Gabriel taken ahead of him. You could talk me into Jalen Milroe going ahead of him, but once we got into day 3, it was really just a surprise to see teams will be trading up in the 4th and 5th round. You're like, oh, surely that's for Shedeur, just because, at that point it's a day 3 pick, like what's the point of kind of waiting around anymore to take him? But yeah, I was surprised in seeing how far that he continued to fall as we got deeper in the draft, and players that, I mean, look, I understand you're at that point, you're not taking them as a starter, but there were some players going off the board that, probably should not have been drafted ahead of him, so
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the biggest takeaway, was not necessarily the landing spot, because like it felt like Cleveland was a team that made sense all along, but taking another quarterback ahead of him and some of the other quarterbacks that, were clearly backup level players, potentially end of roster players, getting taken ahead of him was a big surprise.
Yeah, interesting. It was interesting the way it played out, in my opinion. Devin, great stuff, man, today. Make sure, again, you guys follow him at @RealD_Jackson. Read all his work at Philadelphia Inquirer. Truly one of the best covering the draft. Devin, thanks for joining today, man. We appreciate it. Great job on the 2025 NFL draft, brother. I'm already following your Twitter for the 2026 NFL draft, so appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. 2026, we'll have to wait about 3-4 weeks. I need some time off.
There you go. Take some time, brother. We appreciate it, Devin. Thank you, man. There's Devin Jackson joining us here on Birds 365. Great job by him. Great breakdown of the Eagles draft, of the overall NFL draft. Johnny Mac, good show today, brother. Your final thoughts here. We got a couple of minutes. I thought Devin did a pretty good job breaking down the Eagles draft class. And obviously we got we stirred up the pot a little bit with the offense talk, which always will.
I told you it would stir up the pot. You didn't believe me. I told you.
I believed you. I believed you. It's not been proven.
I don't understand it, man. I don't understand it. I don't think there's a problem. And the Eagles, luckily for Eagles fans, the Eagles themselves will be trying to improve the efficiency of the passing game. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's what they should be trying to do. And they're not going to say, oh, we won the Super Bowl, everything's fine.
Yeah, right. That's a loser's mentality, John.
That is, actually. It is. So nothing wrong with it.
You got to improve.
And
all right, John.
Jalen Hurts would be
pretty good too.
Yeah, Devin's great. You should check him out. As we said at the Philadelphia Inquirer, does a tremendous job. We got through every single pick with him. I thought his, it's always interesting to see who you're highest on. A lot of people are highest on Cameron Williams because he's that. I do think he's the biggest day 3 pick with the upside from the standpoint of if everything clicks, he could be a big time player.
I like the word Devin used, a ball of clay.
Yeah, I think he's also like he's the boomer bust guy. Like he could be a complete washout or he could be a long time NFL starter.
Could be gone after the year or he could be here for the future.
Yeah. And I do think it's interesting that, both of those guys, Miles Hinton and Cam Williams, both talked about playing guard as well. So that's already been broached. And that big kid from Rutgers they signed as undrafted. He was their right guard at rookie camp, and he's like 6'8". Yeah. 6'8".
And he played guard at the rookie camp, didn't he?
Yeah. That's what played right guard. So they will move a big body inside.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do there. Last super chat of the day before we let Johnny Mack get out of here. Brian Pumper. Devin just cemented it. Relying on AJ Hurtneck Dillon and a bootleg Danny Woodhead will haunt Montrez who? And where is Malik Carr? Oh,
yeah. God. I forgot to rip the Malik Carr truthers. Who was that?
Bootleg Danny Woodhead is hilarious.
Who was that? Do we know who that was who said Malik Carr was going to replace Dallas Goedert? Do we know who that was?
No, I do not know who that was. Who
Malik
was that?
Carr, I was telling Zander, Malik Carr didn't even show up.
Yeah. Didn't even show. What, did he get another offer somewhere?
I don't even know. I have to look. I forgot. I totally forgot about it. But I was telling you because I said, where's Malik Carr? I've heard so much about Malik Carr.
Yeah, right.
And that's why they don't publicize these things. Because a lot of times he was coming in as a tryout player. And a lot of times they get a better offer, they get a better situation, and maybe they'll bow out before they actually get to rookie camp. But he was supposed to come in as a tryout player, and we had that one listener who said he was going to replace Dallas Goedert as a tryout player. He wasn't even signed as an undrafted free agent. So I warned him. And he didn't even
What about real quick? What about what Pumper's saying on running back? Are you a Shipley guy? Because I can't say I'm a Shipley guy.
I'm not a Shipley guy. Like I mean, what has he done to? I mean, I'm not a Shipley guy in that I don't like it. I'd rather have Kenny Gainwell, but you're trying to get a little bit cheaper, a little bit younger, a little bit more cost effective, the old NFL standpoint. I'm with Pumpers, AJ Dillon. I don't know if he's going to be healthy. We'll see. But I'm not against Will Shipley. Like he showed some signs. He had the big run against Washington.
I got this seared in my head, Brandon. I'm with you. It's literally seared in my head whenever I think of Will Shipley when he got chased down on that.
What is wrong with you guys? Like somebody runs when
I think of Will Shipley, that's what I think about. John, what's so wrong with that?
Because when you run for 50, whatever it was in the NFL, that's pretty fucking good. Not everybody's Saquon Barkley or Adrian Peterson. that's
I
never
didn't even
getting
make a
chased
comment
down.
about it. I just said I think about it when I think of the player. It was funny.
But I'm saying, I'm asking why, because there's a lot of fan mentality of if somebody gets chased down by the fastest people in the freaking world, NFL defensive backs,
Right.
like that's not rare. Like Saquon's rare. Everybody gets chased down at some point. Everybody. It's the fucking NFL. That's all. It's bizarre to me.
Is Will Shipley good as a running back too or not?
Uncertain, I would say. But that's what I was trying to impart before I got that weird comment. Like a 50-yard run. You're complaining about a 50-yard run.
You're making a lot of assumptions. I didn't complain about it. I just said I
No, I'm talking about
his most memorable play.
I'm talking about Brandon Howard. Well, it is his most memorable play, but it should be most memorable because he had a 50-yard run in an NFL game. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, yeah, both sides of it, right? It was memorable because he got a lot of yards. It was also memorable because he got chased down.
I don't. What am I dealing with here, man?
Both sides of the aisle on that, John. I'm not siding with you there.
No, that's he got chased down in the NFL. Oh my, yeah. So we end on that note. But on Will Shipley, no, I'm not sold on Will Shipley, but I also am not. I thought he showed a lot of positive signs as a rookie. And I would say that I'd prefer to have him as Saquon Barkley's backup, which I said, than AJ Dillon, because I think you have a better context, a better changeup with Will Shipley than AJ. Now, if Saquon was out, as I also said, sprained ankle, yada yada, and you need a lead back, then I think it should be AJ Dillon. So, in other words, if you need somebody to carry the football 20 times, I'd rather that be a healthy AJ Dillon. But as a backup, I think Will Shipley should be fine. But he's unproven, just like all these guys are unproven. Yeah. Tyler Steen's unproven. Kaylee Ringo's unproven. Sidney Brown's unproven. Yada, yada, yada. On and on and on.
Like that guy the Cowboys drafted, Jaden Blue. That kid can run, so we'll see if he has any impact. Many one of them.
Never worried about guys getting chased down. I gotta go bang my head on the wall. Yeah, Jaden Blue.
John, cheer up over there, John. Will Howard has the ability to upset you that much, or Brandon Howard? Excuse me.
No, it's just weird to me. Like 50-yard run in the National Football League for a rookie. And he's worried about him getting chased down because he doesn't score a touchdown. He's inside. I believe he was inside.
John, whether I'm not killing the guy for it. It was funny. That's all. It was funny. It was memorable play for that reason.
Yeah, I don't. Well, because it's more of. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about Brandon Howard. I took it as he was shitting on him because he got chased down in an NFL game, which is silly to me. That's all.
No, that's not the reason that you don't want him as a corner, as the running back too. Can he block? Can he do what the Eagles need him to do? That's
exactly.
My question. I don't know if he can. Yeah,
exactly. That's a little bit more important. But the Eagles will always take a 50-yard run, even if he gets chased down.
For sure. Johnny Mac, good show today, brother. We're way over time. Thank you for doing it. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again tomorrow on a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. Thank you, brother.
All right. Thanks, all.
All right, there's Johnny Mac, John McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. Give him a follow on X at JF McMullen. Well done today by John. Great job by Devin Jackson. I'm a big Devin Jackson fan. He's dope, man. He's really good at doing the draft stuff, the draft talk. He elaborates well, and he's a good follow on X. So make sure you guys follow him. What's going on, everybody in the chat? Whoa, we had a lot of different talk today. Some of you guys weren't so happy with the show, huh? You guys were upset on Birds 365. Oh, no. Birds 365 can't talk about that. Like, where's my guy, Dominique Dabney? Is he here? Dabney, are you here, Dabney? I saw Dabney say, we won the Super Bowl. Why are we talking about this? Well, Dabney, we had a 2-hour show every day, man. What do you want us to talk about? You want us to stroke you every day for 2 hours? I mean, good night. We got some things to talk about. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a pretty good show. James Jones, you're on my shit list for the day. All right. James Jones is on my shit list for the day. That's MD. I'm happy you enjoyed the show. She said the show was great today. Thank you. I appreciate that. I thought it was a good show, too. I thought Devin was great. I thought Devin was great. I thought the offensive discussion was good, too. I mean, we're not under the impression that it's not going to change at all, right? Here's my boy Pumper. What up, Pump? I don't believe in Shunderrick or Montrez. We don't have a reliable backup running back. I don't know why John got so upset about the chase down comment. It was hilarious. It was literally hilarious. I mean, come on, anybody get watch that? It was hilarious. Watching Will Shipley get chased down was objectively a funny play. I mean, we got curmudgeons in here. Johnny Mack went curmudgeon. Johnny Mack went curmudgeon. I know. Look at Mike. Mike needs to teach me the game of football because I thought it was a funny play watching him get chased. Hey, Mike, worry about yourself, Mike. He covered up the ball. So I know what he did. I watched it. Thank you. It was funny. All right, Mike? If you don't find that funny, then congrats. We got a different sense of humor. Good for you, Ronald. Never even seen you in here in my life. I read that Tank Dell got put under for his tat. Ooh, I don't know what was going on with that. That was a pretty dope tat that Jalen Carter got, though. I will say that. All right. His gas tank was on E. Again, I'm not killing the player. It's all good. It was a good run. It was funny. It was funny watching him burn out. All right. I mean, good night. You guys are soft, man. You guys are buttercups. Twiz. What up, Twiz? More than half the chat can't run 50 feet and cried about 50 yards. He's not Saquon. He's a backup. Twiz, you should have said that when Johnny Mack was here. Johnny Mack would love that super chat, Twizzler. Thank you. Dirty Air with a good take. Dirty Air with a, you know damn well Shipley's training hard to not get run down next time. Exactly right, Dirty Air. Exactly right. He's fast enough but can't run far. I got no issue with the speed. He's not our starting back, and he's not ever going to be our starting back. So I don't have any issue with it. I just, like Brandon Howard, thought it was a funny play. I mean, it's the most memorable play of Will Shipley's career so far. Yes or no? What is the most memorable play of Will Shipley's Eagles career? It's got to be the rundown, right? It's got to be the rundown. I'm not saying it was a bad run. It was just a memorable play. Yes, exactly, Dank. A memorable moment in a memorable game. All right? Yeah. You look like a tired pug. I'm not going that far. I won't go that far. All right? I don't want to beat up on him too bad. Maybe it's Clemson. You know me. I hate Clemson because they beat Alabama when I was there in the national championship. So maybe I'm just against Clemson players. All right? I appreciate the super chats today, though. Good show. What you guys think of the offensive discussion? If you guys can be grown adults and we can have the conversation. All right, what do you think the offense looks like this year? You guys think the offense changes at all? I think some of you guys had some valid comments, which I tried to read or at least address most of. But I think it's not unfair to look at the offense and say, all right, what's different about the team this year, right? Because I do think, there were people commenting, well, the game plan for Saquon last year, yeah, of course they did, but they didn't have as much tape. They don't have as much preparation time. I mean, that's a different thing. That's a different thing when you're in the season preparing for Saquon versus when you have an off season and that team won the Super Bowl and every team is looking at the Eagles and saying, okay, how do we stop them? I mean, John mentioned it. There's teams signing players and drafting players specifically to stop the Eagles. I mean, do you think the Rams signed Poona Ford for any reason other than the Eagles? Now, maybe they wanted to stop the run better overall. Yeah, but of course, they wanted to slay the dragon of the Eagles. That's who knocked them out. That's who knocked him out. And they watched Saquon Barkley run in the snow and create an NFL Films moment against them. Right? I mean, it's not, teams are going to come in to try and stop Saquon. Now, you could argue they're not going to be successful. I would agree with that to some extent. But what changes in the offense this year? I think it's going to be a little bit more passing. Let's go to Dirty Air, who's got one. He's 1 for 1 so far today. Dirty Air, good to have you in here. They're going to have to pass more because teams will have tape to stop the run. Thank you. This is what I've been saying. interested also to see how the fullback role evolves. Yeah, and you heard Jeffrey Lurie talk about that. I thought that was pretty interesting. And I think this is, again, the natural, logical take by Dirty Air, which I don't know why some people got such their panties in a bind when I mentioned this. I mean, Texas T checking in. What's up, Texas T? I think people put how a game should be won in a box. There you go. You're using my phrase. If the passing yards aren't where they should think it should be, then something is wrong. I agree with that overall, Texas T. And I think that, I think that happened a lot when you have people talk about the Super Bowl team. I've tried to pride myself on not doing that because, again, my opinion on how it should look doesn't matter. The result matters more. But I do think moving forward, it's going to change a little bit. Do you agree with that or no? I do agree with your sentiment, though, that people want it to look a certain way or they have an expectation for how it's going to look. And when it doesn't look, they don't even care about the result. They just care that it didn't look how they wanted to. I agree with that. I give Sill shit for that all the time. All right. Curtis says, Z, if the pass game doesn't improve, are we blaming Jalen or Patul? That's a fair question. Let's see how it unfolds, Curtis. I don't think you can make that proclamation right now. Bob Brown says, Z, I think we will see more 12 personnel to keep the running game rolling. Hopefully when teams sell out to stop the run, we can counter over the top and with slants. I agree. I think that's good take, Bob. The thing with 12 personnel is, like, do they have the tight ends for that, Bob? Are you good having Calcaterra on the field at all times? I don't know. I mean, who'd you rather have, Calcaterra or Dotson? If you looked at the tape last year, you'd say Calcaterra. But, if we are arguing or are discussing the potential for an increase in the passing game, maybe you want Dotson out there. Maybe you don't. I mean, Calcaterra is a pretty good pass catcher. That's the one thing he does do well. All right, that's the one thing he does do well. Pumper with a super chat. What up, Pump? 2023 was playing on a new contract. 2025, all these Met Galas, magazine covers, and wokeness got me concerned about the 29th passing attack. Yeah, Pumper, I don't know if you're wrong. We'll see what happens, bro. We'll see what happens. Met Galas, magazine covers, and wokeness. Brian Pumper just has an ability. Whether you love or hate Brian Pumper, the guy's got an ability to make a comment and make people react to it. He just does. Pumper, well done. Texas T following up. I agree. I do think they have the talent for winning a game however it needs to be. Not every team can do that, and they shouldn't be criticized for it. I agree with that. Texas T, that was, again, and I brought this up. I tried to, at least. The biggest feather in their cap is there were certain moments in the year where teams legitimately said, I'm going to sell out and stop Saquon. The Pittsburgh game did it, and the Super Bowl did it most notably. The Commanders in the playoffs, Jalen had a pass as well in that game, and he did very effectively. But the two games that jump off the page to me, and you could kind of see the Bengals too, maybe a little earlier in the year, not as much there, but the Bengals too. Those were 3 games or 2 games, let's use Pittsburgh and the Super Bowl, where it was like, if Jalen doesn't pass well, the offense isn't going to move the ball. Saquon didn't do anything in the Super Bowl. Let's be real. He had like 50 yards. So, and he did. He passed the ball really well. Now, you could extrapolate that and say, how will he do it consistently across the season? Maybe that's a different question. But you're right, Texas T. As it stands today, they answered it, man. They answered it. He was very effective in the NFC title game. His 2 best games of the year were, well, you could put Pittsburgh up there, but outside of Pittsburgh were the 2 games that mattered the most, the NFC title game and the Super Bowl. And I do think that matters for something. Fly Eagle says, I can't stand shoulda, woulda, coulda. Could the Rams have beat us? Sure, I guess. Did they? No. When is their almost ring ceremony? That's a good take, Fly Eagles. Listen, I think I agree with your take. Here's the thing I'd say. It's easier for you to have that take. And I'm not criticizing you because your perspective is your perspective and your perspective is correct. But from our perspective, remember, we're doing a show for 2 hours a day. So like you're going to talk about things because when you project how it's going to look in the future, you can go to those coulda, shoulda, woulda. Again, you're right. There's no Super Bowl rings for, I almost did it. But when you're talking about doing a show every day for 2 hours and you're talking about the changes from year to year, those coulda, shoulda, wouldas become more relevant to the conversation, all right? More relevant to the conversation, whether right or wrong. Did Saquon get a tutty in the Super Bowl? I'm not sure if he did. I know he had like 50 yards. Let's look. Super Bowl 59 stats. Let's look. I'm still pissed about the final score of that game because it just doesn't represent the game at all. Saquon had no running touchdown. No, he didn't have a touchdown in the Super Bowl. He did have 42 or 40 receiving yards, which is pretty good for him. No touchdown, though. No touchdown. Xander, your boy looked good against us. Respect, bro. There you go, James. No, he didn't. Jalen had all of our touchdowns. Yeah, Jalen was excellent in the Super Bowl. That's the best part about Jalen Hurts. 2 Super Bowls, 2 of his best games in his career. I mean, what more do we want? That's the other thing. It's like I can sit up here and make a comment that I believe the passing game is going to need to be more this year, and I think that's fair. Now, you guys might not. That's fine. I think it could be more, but I can also acknowledge that anytime we need Jalen Hurts to be great, he's been great. And I'd rather have that over Dak Prescott, who throws for 4,500 yards a season. And then when the lights get bright, he throws 3 interceptions to one of the worst defenses in the league. Like, I'd rather have that all day and twice on Sunday. All right. So I'm not letting that's not lost on me. I just think you got to remember, we're going to have every conversation. We got a long off season. We're going to have every conversation, and you will not like all of them. All right. But as long as you engage in all of them, I'll be happy. Bob Brown, checking in. Bob Brown says, Xander, for the offense to utilize the running game to set up the pass, Petula will need to implement more play action. Play action will hold the linebacker and safety, allowing Hurts to work the route trick. I agree, Bob. How much will they do it? Jalen hasn't really been a play action quarterback much in his career. So, how much do they go to that? Now, I do think, Bob, it's easier to do this year, or will at least be more beneficial to do this year, because you are coming off, obviously, the historic running season that you had. So naturally, teams are going to bite more on that, because you got Saquon Barkley. Let's be real, he's the best running back in football. He set a record last year. You got to take him away, or you got to at least be prepared to take him away, which could allow those play actions to really open up the offense. Bob, I agree with that. Bob. Good take as always. Brandon Howard checking in. Yo, B-How, you're in the Johnny Mac crosshairs, brother. How's it feel? B-How, I'll tell you what, B-How, I love you, but you've been shitting on Johnny Mac a lot recently. I've been seeing it, and he now clapped back a little bit. Maybe, just maybe, John's been seeing it too. I don't think he has, but maybe. I think John secretly keeps his eye on the chat. He says he doesn't, but I think he secretly keeps his eye on the chat. Brandon says, I think the offense got better as the year went along, as we adjusted to having Barkley. This year, I think the passing game continues to improve and will shine when teams sell out to stop Barkley. I agree. I'm sure B-How is shaking. He's shaking in his boots. He's Canadian, Siglord. A tree shakes outside and he shakes in his boot. The wind blows and they shake in their boots. I mean, are you kidding me? He's Canadian. Let's be real. Let's call a spade a spade. Brandon, I love you, but you're a Canadian. All right? Bring it on, J-Mac. I love it. Curtis says, hey, sometimes the games are close, though. I guess technically we didn't need the pass game, but I don't think you're trying to have close games against the Jags and Panthers. Yeah, but Kurt, it's the NFL, bro. I mean, Curtis, let me ask you this. Is the new standard blow teams out or bust? I mean, look, that's the desire, but that's not realistic. It's the NFL, man. You're playing great teams and great players every week. All right? This is not college. All right? You don't blow out the Jags and the Panthers because you wish the passing game looked better. Remember, the passing game is lining up against players on the other side of the other side too that are damn good. All right, the Jags might stink, the Panthers might stink. They got good players. The players who are on those teams made it to the NFL. They are good players that the offense is lining up against. Again, I hear you, but that is pie in the sky. That is Curtis, and I love you, and I do think you're largely a very objective fan and a good fan, but. Don't you think that's largely like a fan perspective where it's like, we didn't beat the Jags and Panthers enough or good enough or with a big enough win margin? Like, at the end of the day, we're being spoiled. we went 16-1 the end of the season, and we're mad that some of the wins weren't big enough. I don't know about that, Curtis. I don't know about that, but I hear you. He says, I'm just saying it's too convenient to say we didn't need the pass game 18 games, so that's why it wasn't good. I agree with that. I agree. I think I'm in the middle of you. All right, I'm in the middle of you. J-Mac hates us. He doesn't hate you. J-Mac, I feel like J-Mac hates anybody. I mean, J-Mac hates everybody. He hates Twitter. He hates the chat. He hates anybody who doesn't say what J-Mac says he hates. He hates me sometimes. I don't really care. We got a show to do, John. If I agree with everything you say, the show would stink. Everyone takes it for granted. The ficklest of Jags and Panthers get good. Exactly. Well, that's part of it, Fly Eagles. They got good players, man. They got good players. All right. They got good players. J-Mac be cooking Zay Pumper. The only guy who gets cooked more than me is you, my guy. All right. I can take it cooking. Texas T, I think it's because we blew out the better teams and had closer wins against teams we should have blown out. That's fair. But there's also a positive to that where you play your best versus better teams, right? I mean, shit, I'll take that. You're not playing the Jags and the Panthers in the playoffs, that's for sure. Now, people would point to that Rams game in the playoffs. That wasn't too great. All right. I don't remember this. Brian says, still remember when J-Mac told Z to stop meat riding. No, he didn't. J-Mac doesn't use terminology like that, Pumper. The funniest thing is when I say something and John will look at me and say, I'm not talking about you. I'm like, well, I said it. Who are you talking about? You know, who are you talking about? Just shit on me. If you got to shit on me, I'd rather you shit on me. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's stupid. No offense, I'm not saying you, but the fans. Yeah, he does do that a lot. He deflects it off me. It's like, bro, you can cook me. It's all good. All right? I'm not self-righteous enough to believe that my perspectives on everything are the right perspectives. I'm willing to be wrong, and that's on everything in life. J-Mac kills me trying to be objective, but hits very clear what guys he likes in the locker room. That's fair. I remember that when he told me to shut the fuck up. Oh man, I gotta push John's buttons a little bit more, honestly. I like when we push his buttons. I like it. Low Eagles checking in. We also have to remember we're pretty healthy during the season going into that Super Bowl. We have to have a season like that again. Yeah, Low. Now, they have had that consistent structure in the offseason where they followed, and there was a true criticism, at some point where people are like, why are you not playing anybody? You're going to be stale in the regular season. And, their philosophy has worked, and you can no longer criticize it. I certainly will not. Like, where would you rather have your players? Play great week one because they got preseason reps, or be healthy in the Super Bowl? Obviously, it's the latter. So, obviously, it's the latter. Yeah, we've had some funny moments this week, too, or really in the last couple of weeks as well, with Cougars. What was today? Not Cougars. And not the Twink either. What did John say today? Didn't John bring up something today that was funny? What was the word today, A-Team? A-Team, help me out. Oh, BBL. Brazilian butt lifts. Johnny Mac's talking about Brazilian butt lifts. Oh, man, that was funny, man. Prince. I know Prince likes them BBLs. Prince is a BBL machine, baby. Prince sees a BBL and drool starts leaking out his mouth on his shirt. I mean, Prince will have to go home and change shirts down in Miami or wherever the heck he lives when he sees a BBL. Dude gets caught at lunch. He's out to lunch. Prince gets caught staring. His girl slaps him. What are you looking at? Oh, nothing, honey. Nothing. Oh, man. Prince be drooling. Dirty Air checking in. The team is going to be even scarier this year if we think about it. I feel like this is the first step. This is the first back-to-back season we have had with relatively intact and improved lineup. Dirty Air, I don't think you can say that defense is improved, bro. I'm sorry. You can't say that, Dirty Air. Offense for sure. How are you going to sit here and tell me you lost Milton, you lost Sweat, you lost Slay, you lost Gardner Johnson? I mean, here where I agree with you, Dirty Air, is I think the potential upside in the future is bigger now. I think they could be, or their ceiling is higher. But I don't think you're coming back with an improved lineup on defense. I don't. I don't. All right. Now you guys got a bunch of pause, no ditties in the comments. All right. The story is unwritten. Well, no shit, Brandon. It's May. Brandon, I love you, man. It's May, bro. No shit. Thanks, Captain Obvious. The story is unwritten. Oh, Brandon, I thought it was over. All right, I thought it was over, B-How. This defense is going to be scary. It has the potential to be. It has the potential to be. But listen, there is a lot of projection. Who's your starting safety? Who's your starting cornerback too? Now, I feel better about replacing Milton Williams because I'm a big more of a Jomo believer. Who replaces Josh Sweat? All right, I mean, I think these are fair questions. That would be the one pushback I'd give on Dirty Air, who says, who thinks we're returning with a good lineup. We are returning with our offense, which is going to be crazy. Sidney Brown and Keely Ringo. Not to be confused with Sidney Sweeney. Brian, I'm sure you were all over that last night. All right, I'm getting out of here. I appreciate you all. Great show today. Great show today here on Birds 365. I'm going to post up the segments. We'll post up the offense segment. I'm sure that will elicit a lot of hate. Good. Can't wait to read those comments. All right, I'm sure that'll get a lot of hate. And I will also post out Devin Jackson. We'll post out the Open, the Eagles daily updates of losing Anthony Patch. I don't think that means anything, but we'll see what happens. All right. Thank you all for being here. Great show as always. All right. Let me see if Prince responded to I put Prince on the blend. I put Prince on the, he just gave me a good skull face. Good stuff, Prince. I love you, brother. All right. Appreciate all of you guys. Good show today. We'll see. Oh, here's Dirty Air. Let me get to him because I wanted to give him a chance to follow up. Ojulari, Campbell, Jalix, Price are. Damn well Simmons will be starting safety. Yeah, a lot of projection on those guys, though, Dirty Air. Again, I'm not against you in that I do think those guys are going to be good players. Ojulari, we'll see. Jalix, I think, is going to be great. Campbell, I think, is going to be great. But you do have to admit, we are projecting. Now, we'll see. But certainly has the chance. This chair is getting squeaky. I got to get out the tools. Fix this thing. All right. I appreciate all you guys for listening in today. Dirty Air, great stuff. Prince, I appreciate you, dog. A-Team, M. Reyes, my boy M. Reyes is in here. Dawood Jones, I hope I pronounced that right. It's one name I struggle with. Is it Dawood? Am I right with that? You can correct me if I'm wrong. Dullahan Monster, thank you, Dullahan. Curtis, great stuff as always, brother. Great comments from you. Jammers, good to have you in here. SMD Eagles, my girl, thank you so much. I appreciate you. JD3, our resident Harrison Bryant fan. Twiz the Jigga, one of the best in the business. A-Team, Sig Lord. Appreciate all you guys, man. Great shows this week. Bob Brown, thank you for your comments. As always, Bob, you always crush it. Fly Eagles Fly, who I've now learned is not my bro, is my girl. All right, so Fly Eagle. You got to change your name. Like put like a parentheses F at the end. So I know you're a female. I mean, you got Fly Eagles Fly with who is it? Smitty and Saquon in your picture. How am I supposed to know you're a female? How am I supposed to know? But I appreciate it. Bird Gang Girl, appreciate you. Appreciate everybody. All right. Thank you guys so much. And I'll see you next time on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.